That night changed everything. It wasn't just about losing Avery, it was about losing trust, about realizing that the foundation I had built my life upon had begun to crack long before I noticed. And yet, nothing prepared me for how it all unraveled. She was unusually meticulous that evening. I sat silently, watching as she applied her makeup with practiced precision, her hands steady, her expression unreadable. She slipped into her favorite dress, the one that had once made my heart race, and adjusted the laces on her high heels with care. But there was something missing, the warmth in her eyes, the soft glow of familiarity. "I'm going to a colleague's birthday party," she said without looking at me.
"Don't wait up.
I might be late." The words felt routine, almost too casual, but beneath them, I sensed something deeper.
An escape, not an explanation.
I exhaled slowly, trying to suppress the unease growing in my chest. "Avery, you've been going out a lot lately," I finally said, keeping my voice steady. "Every time you leave, I get this bad feeling."
"What's going on?"
She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she busied herself adjusting her dress, smoothing the fabric as though it would erase the tension hanging between us. Then, with an exasperated sigh, she muttered, "It's just a party. I want to have fun with my friends. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Her words cut through me like a blade, sharper than I expected. Was this what happiness had become? An excuse, a means of escape? I thought back to the nights we used to talk for hours, the way we once shared everything without hesitation. But now, those moments felt distant, hidden behind a curtain of secrecy. "It's not just about the party, Avery," I said, my voice firm but heavy with emotion.
"This is about us."
"Every night, I sit here alone, wondering where you are, wondering if you even think about me anymore. And each time, I feel less certain about what we have. Why are you doing this? Why are you pulling away?" For a moment, just a brief flicker, guilt flashed across her face. But just as quickly she masked it, turning her gaze toward the door. "I don't want to fight with you, Ethan," she said softly. "It's just a party, that's all." But it wasn't just a party. And we both knew it. Something inside me snapped, the fragile thread of patience finally giving way. My voice was unsteady, but my words came with a finality I hadn't planned. "If you walk out that door tonight, don't come back." Avery froze, her fingers hovering over the doorknob. Slowly she turned to face me, her expression unreadable, a mix of shock and something else. Anger?
Hurt? Maybe both.
"Are you serious?" she whispered. I met her gaze, searching for any trace of the woman I once knew, the woman I had loved so deeply. But she felt so far away now, like a stranger standing in front of me. And yet, I still found the strength to say, "I mean it. If you leave tonight, don't come back." She hesitated for only a moment. Then, with a slow breath, she straightened her shoulders, swallowed whatever emotions she was battling, and whispered, "I'm leaving. We'll talk later." The door clicked shut behind her, and in that instant, something inside me shattered. It wasn't just the sound of the door closing, it was the weight of finality, the realization that the bond we had shared was now hanging by the thinnest thread. I stayed there, motionless, staring at the empty space she had left behind. The silence in the room became suffocating, thick with everything left unsaid. I tried to steady myself, to suppress the storm raging inside me, but the fear and doubt I had long ignored were now impossible to deny. Her footsteps faded into the night, each step deepening the chasm between us, not just in distance, but in something far greater. And as I sat there in the quiet, I knew, this was the beginning of the end. An hour later, my phone lit up with a message. My heart pounded as I reached for it, a strange sense of dread settling in my chest before I even read the words. I just saw Avery with a man on the street. "Is everything okay?" I stared at the screen, my vision blurring as the message sank in. My worst fear had taken form, no longer just a suspicion clawing at the edges of my mind but a truth staring me in the face. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. 1,000 thoughts rushed through me, each one more painful than the last.
Who was he?
Had this been happening all along? What was Avery doing with him? The questions twisted like knives in my gut, but no matter how many I asked, the answers remained just out of reach.
Should I call her? Confront her?
Pretend I hadn't seen the message and wait for her to come home? My hands trembled as I gripped the phone, unable to make a decision. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, some reason that would make sense of all of this.
But deep down, I knew better.
I closed my eyes and tried to ground myself in the past. I remembered the early days, when Avery and I first met, when we would laugh until we couldn't breathe, when our late-night conversations stretched until dawn. The way she used to look at me, as if I was the only person in the world. Had I done something wrong? Had I failed her in some way? Had I missed the signs? But no matter how much I searched for blame within myself, I realized something chilling. Avery had made her choice. And she had done it without me. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the Avery I once knew, but the Avery in my imagination. The one who walked the streets with another man, smiling, laughing, completely unburdened. The image burned into my mind, twisting my anger and heartbreak into something unbearable. Morning arrived, and with it, Avery. She stepped into the house as if nothing had happened, her heels clicking softly against the floor. There was no guilt in her expression, no hesitation in the way she moved. Her makeup was slightly smudged, a subtle but damning sign that she had been out all night. I watched in silence as she poured herself a cup of coffee, her hand steady, her demeanor unaffected. "Morning," she said casually, as if everything was normal. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because for me, nothing was normal anymore. I sat there, my world crumbling around me, while she carried on as if our marriage was still intact, as if she hadn't just shattered everything we had built. And in that moment, I knew. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't live under the shadow of a lie, pretending that nothing had changed when, in reality, everything had. As soon as she left for work, I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out my suitcases. My hands moved mechanically, folding clothes, packing away pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. Every movement was deliberate, final, a quiet acceptance of the end. I avoided looking at the framed photos on the walls, the smiling faces frozen in time, capturing a love that no longer existed. Those memories had once brought me joy, now, they felt like ghosts haunting the empty spaces of our home. After a few hours, everything was ready. I sat down and wrote her a letter, my hand steady for the first time in what felt like forever. The words were simple, direct, just like the pain that had led me to this decision. I have packed my bags. I am leaving. I can't live like this anymore. This marriage is over. I placed the note where she would see it, then turned off my phone. I didn't want to see her response. I didn't need to hear her excuses. There was nothing left to say. As I stepped outside, a deep ache settled in my chest. The house that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a prison, filled with memories that no longer belonged to me. I placed my suitcase in the trunk of my car and hesitated for just a moment, taking in the life I was leaving behind. The dreams we had built together were gone now, lost to time and choices that could never be undone. The sun was shining. The radio played softly in the background. But none of it mattered. As I drove away, the only thing I could hear was the silence inside me, louder than anything else. I never thought I could love someone the way I loved Avery. Everything about her captivated me, her smile, the way she spoke, the way she saw the world with such energy and light. She had once felt like the missing piece of my life, the one person who truly understood me. But now, I saw the truth hidden behind those smiles, the deception that had lurked beneath the warmth I had once trusted. Needing time to clear my mind, I checked into a quiet hotel on the outskirts of the city. The silence of that small room became my sanctuary, a place where I could sit with my thoughts, no longer distracted by the ghost of what I had lost. I knew Avery would try to contact me. And when I finally turned my phone back on, the screen filled with missed calls and unread messages. She had written to me over and over again, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Her words, once enough to soothe me, now felt empty. Trust, once broken, could never be repaired. A few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that Avery wasn't handling my absence well. She had been crying nonstop, shutting herself inside our home, even skipping work. But the news didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. A part of me still cared. I couldn't deny that. But caring wasn't enough to erase what had happened. To forgive her would have meant betraying myself, ignoring my own worth, and that was something I refused to do. So, I moved forward. I left the city that had once been ours and started fresh somewhere new. I found a job, rented a small apartment, and focused on rebuilding the pieces of my life, one day at a time. The pain lingered, but I held on to the hope that one day, it would fade into nothing more than a distant memory. And then, by chance, I met Lily. She was nothing like Avery, and yet in her presence, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. Her smile was warm, her laughter effortless, and in the quiet moments between us, I found myself forgetting the past, if only for a little while. At first, I kept my guard up, terrified of repeating my mistakes. But Lily was patient. She never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give. And slowly, I realized that I was no longer just healing, I was beginning to trust again. A year passed, and I found myself standing in a place I never thought I'd reach. I asked Lily to marry me, and when she said yes, I knew for the first time in a long time that I was free. Free from the past.
Free from the pain.
Free to build a future that wasn't tainted by betrayal. Meanwhile, Avery's life took a different path. Friends from my old life told me she had grown more distant, retreating into the same reckless habits she had once used to escape. She was surrounded by people but lonelier than ever, trying to fill an emptiness that couldn't be ignored. One day, I came across a post she had shared on social media, an old photo of us, accompanied by a simple caption, "I realize now what I lost." But the words meant nothing to me anymore. Because in the end, it was never my loss.
It was hers.
Looking back, I see now that her betrayal had taken me away from a life I once cherished, from a love I had given so freely. But in doing so, it had given me something far greater, the strength to start again, to build something real, something lasting. We all have our limits. And I had finally reached mine. Now, with Lily by my side, I live a life built on trust, love, and the happiness I always knew I deserved. Some people stay trapped in the past, reliving their mistakes, unable to move forward.
But not me.
I am walking toward the future. And that is my greatest victory.